Hi, everybody. This is the Dr. Debunk Weekly Podcast Show. On this show, I'm going to be debunking the medical myths, garbage, and crap that's spread by doctors and other health professionals. Dr. Debunk is the medical truth teller. Today's podcast is going to be about genetic testing. This is a podcast I've wanted to do for a while because there's a lot of new information about genetics and testing, and it's all over in the news, it's in the paper, it just shows up everywhere. And genetic testing is going to be a huge thing in the future in medicine. It has huge potential to be good, but it has huge potential to be abused. And I'm going to talk about it kind of from the abuse point of view, because you're not going to get this in regular medicine. Everybody's just ecstatic about getting all these genetic testings to help people find out sensitivities to this or disease. And all of that's true, but there's a dark side to this. And that's what Dr. Debunk does, expose the darkness. So we're going to shine some truth on this so you can have information to make an informed decision about how you want to do it. I mean, genetic testing today, already, the prices has come down dramatically. You can get a couple hundred genetic tests for like $250. I'm not up to date on the insurance covering it. I don't think they cover most of them. But anyway, let me give you an overview, and we'll start with the real basics. For those of you that don't have science, I mean, human genetics, or your DNA, we'll just call it the DNA for right now, is the stuff that has the information that basically tells your body what to do. So your genes are the DNA. I mean, we have 23 chromosomes, which are the DNA, and they're made up of these things called base pairs, and there's 3 billion of them. But that doesn't really matter. What matters is there's maybe 1 million gene sequences. It changes every year. And what that means is there's 1 million different genetic commands or genetic things that can happen. And so the way to understand it is organ by organ. So the liver then, to use an example, your liver and the liver cells are just a giant factory that gets rid of metabolic waste products, toxins, foreign substances. It's like a processing factory. Well, the factory workers, or the enzymes, know what to do because only the genetic material that has to do with liver cell function gets accessed by the liver workers, shall we say. The workers have a way of getting into the computer or the DNA that has the information, and that tells them what to do. It also functions for rebuilding commands. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that the DNA does in rebuilding cells and making them function, but it's all there. The DNA has the information. Well, there's a lot of variability on how people work, and that's the variability with our DNA. I mean, like I mentioned, they're estimating maybe up to 1 million different gene codes. And so there's a lot of variability. And that's what the testing is about, understanding the variability, because, for example, alcohol, and I think they found this gene, alcohol is broken down and gotten rid of by the liver through something called alcohol dehydrogenase. It's an enzyme, it's a worker. But you can have defective dehydrogenase. And we know clinically there's a condition where people don't make the right amount of this dehydrogenase, and so they can't drink very much, and then the booze becomes toxic. I mean, normally you can drink like a fish for 15 to 20 years before it kills you. But if you're deficient in this enzyme, in 3 to 5 years, if you drink heavy, you're dead. You'll get cirrhosis and die. Well, there's genes associated with that. We could identify that. And so that's how the testing is valuable. If you did a test on a kid and you saw that it's like, hey, if you drink booze in 3 to 5 years, you'll be dead. Well, a sane person would not drink booze. Well, this is going to be applicable to everything because every organ works the same way. And so right now, and this was new to me because I hadn't looked at the advances for a number of years. I thought that was 2,000 or 3,000 genetic tests. They have 60,000 tests now available. 60,000 different tests looking at the different aspects of our DNA information. And so they will finally decode all of it. And so the implications are staggering because not only is it to identify susceptibility to diseases, but numerous other things. So let me give you just a quick rundown of the different categories of things that we're going to do with DNA testing. The first two you kind of know about. You can screen for diseases in fetuses. They do samples on pregnant women. And then there's newborn screenings. I think they do like 21 tests or something. It's like by law. By law, they have to run these tests on because you can find conditions like polycystic kidney disease, which is this kidney problem. Another big condition that's really important. Well, that comes later. I'm jumping ahead. So it's been used for newborns and fetuses for a long time. But the next big category that's going to take off, already has, is called carrier testing. And what that basically means is they can see if you have like recessive genes that don't do anything bad to you, but if you marry somebody that's got the other recessive gene, your kids are going to be toast. Extra crispy or well done. Take your pick. The most famous example of carrier testing is cystic fibrosis. It's a terrible disease for children and teenagers that manifests when two parents have the recessive gene. The parents are fine, and it causes all this mucousy, messed up lungs. Anyway, all these kids die between 12 and 20, I don't remember. They don't live very long. It's devastating because the mothers watch their children die a slow and painful death. So two people that have those recessive genes should not make babies because every single kid will have cystic fibrosis. So there's a whole host of things like that. And they are just getting started. So it'd be really valuable to know this stuff about your DNA. And then they do fertility testing. So for like in vitro stuff where they check the viability of sperms and eggs. And there's a whole host of things there. They've been doing that a while. A big category that includes the carrier testing it's really called predictive and presumptive testing. And so that's where you look at DNA for not only recessive genes, but are you predisposed to something? And the most famous example of that is the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, which is the breast cancer genes. High predictability. I think it's 60%, don't quote me. If you have both, BRCA1, BRCA2, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but BRCA. Anyway, someday somebody's going to tell me how to say that. Anyway, already there's a whole bunch of these tests. And then another big category is pharmacogenetics. And that's where you look at the DNA to see how people react to drugs. The big one right now is for pain meds, but it's really kind of a simple way to look at it is, do you metabolize drugs slowly or very slowly, intermittently, fast, super fast? Because people that metabolize drugs really fast, they eat pain pills like candy and they do nothing. They can eat a lot of medicines and they don't do anything. And a slow metabolizer can react very strongly. So that's going to be a general thing that's very good for like cancer, pain, huge potential. And then things you've heard about, forensic testing in the law, typing people for paternity. There's a number of other things like that. And so the big issue that's really good is as this gets cheaper, you'll be able to really pick and choose what you want and pay because it's going to probably get cheap. Right now there's Like I said, it's $200 for maybe 200 tests. I've looked at some of those. Some of the tests are stupid. I mean, of course, companies are going to figure out simple genetic tests that don't cost them much money, and they're going to throw it in there and say, oh, look, we have 220, we have 230. And so some knowledge will be necessary, which Dr. Debunk will give you about what you really need, depending on your circumstances. But it will really give you information about, sensitivity. So it goes like kind of this. There'll be genetics. Well, it kind of goes back to 30 years ago. When I first became a doctor, we talked about this. That's when they hadn't even sequenced the human DNA. We didn't even know how many base pairs there were. I mean, they had located a couple hundred genes. I don't know. Anyway, but what we theorized back then is like for virtually every condition, even psychological stuff, you would have suppressor genes and, say, amplifier genes. So you would have genes that would suppress your ability to get congestive heart failure or depression or liver disease or dementia. And then you would have, genes that predispose you to these conditions. And even then, you could understand lifestyle factors that would predispose you. So we knew then it was going to open up a whole new world, and that's what's here with this. So it's going to extend into mental conditions, how predisposed you are to depression. But some of the bigger stuff is even personality traits. I mean, there's so much potential here of knowledge for people that it's just amazing. But the downside is, who's going to get their hands on your personal information? I mean, if anything's personal, it's your DNA. And so when we come back from the break, I'm going to give you some really hardcore scenarios that you need to think about before you let people have access to your DNA. Hi, everybody. Dr. Debunk here, and I bet you think this is going to be a commercial about KSK Cold Spray. But you're wrong, because if you've been listening to my podcast, then you know I've been pushing my spray. But the flu season's over, and so I wanted to mention to you something that some of you know I do, but that is about weight loss and weight maintenance or controlling your weight, the whole subject of weight. I've mentioned it in some of my podcasts, giving little bits of information. But I have been studying weight and helping my patients lose and then maintain weight for 11 years. And this program I've developed with much trial and suffering is now capable of getting 30 to 50 pounds off just about anybody in 3 to 4 months. You heard it right, 30 to 50 pounds, 3 or 4 months. And so what you should do is, just to get some information, so what you should do is go to Dr. Debunk website. That's drdebunk.com. If you haven't been there, there's videos and some information, but I have a little introductory video there about weight, how it works, why we are so fat in America, why it's so difficult. It's about 30 minutes, and if you watch it, you'll get it. You'll get what I do, what I can do for you, and how the program works. So that's it. I'm Dr. Debunk, the medical truth teller. Welcome back. As I was saying, genetic testing is going to be amazing. It's going to be an aid to doctors, to all you patients. But the abuse potential is off the charts. But before I jump into that, I forgot to mention that I think right now genetic testing is a little early. I mean, you can do it, but many of the tests are really not that relevant because it shows you something and there's really not anything to do about it. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, they've developed panels. There's I've seen little panels about exercise, about different factors. I mean, if you don't mind spending the money, it's fine. But I think in about 2 years, it could be really amazing. But let's get to the privacy issues, because that's what this is about. It's a huge factor, because this information is very personal. It's going to reveal things about you that a lot of people want to know, and they'll want to know it for their benefit, not yours. Now let's talk about that. So first, if you think your DNA information is going to be private because you get it done by your doctor or some health provider, if you electronically buy your DNA testing anywhere and your name's on it, that information is going to be everywhere. There is no such thing as privacy for DNA information. It's not going to exist. Oh, they'll say it is. I mean, there's like 100 HIPAA laws that me, as a doctor, about keeping medical records private, but it doesn't matter. The government is not going to keep this private. They will have access to your private medical chart, and so will companies. And this is not a conspiracy thing, because the value that governments and companies will place on this is in the billions and billions of dollars. I mean, it's going on today. I mean, let me give you an example of why this is just not a conspiracy and me being paranoid. I mean, you go to your doctor and you get an office visit, and most of us have electronic medical records now. And so that gets sent off to a billing company and it's billed to the insurance company through the whatever insurance. They have these things called clearinghouses. And then if it's Medicare, it just goes right into the government files. And the people that have access to that are billers. And they're not seeing your chart, but they're seeing your billing information so they can bill it out. But guess what's on the billing sheet? When the way we send it off and the way it all works, these forms they have, it's called a HCFA form. It has just billing information about you, your insurance, your name, blah, 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 Social Security, blah. But you know what else it has? On the very top, it has the reason for the office visit. Like, why did you go see your doctor? And you know what's included in that? Everything the doctor wrote in your complaints. We call it the subjective complaints. Why is the patient there? You come in because your butt hurts or you have a runny nose or whatever. So everything he writes goes to the administrative aspects of the healthcare systems. All of them, all insurers and Medicare. So they're really not supposed to have that information. But when you sign up for the insurance company, you agree to it. And they say, well, it's just what you complain of, but it doesn't need to be there. What do you think the next step is going to be? It'll be what the doctor finds objectively. Because, of course, the other thing that's on the visit is the diagnoses. So they already know what you complained about and what the doctor diagnosed you with. And so, including genetic information, it's going to be there. Now, what the government wants to do with it, well, I'll let the conspiracy theorists run wild with that. I mean, your mind can run wild. And I just won't even go there. What's more important is private companies. Private companies are going to get your DNA if you make it available. Not maybe, not sort of. They will get it. Because it is huge for them. Huge. You got to think of how this is going to work. If a company could get access to your DNA information when they're ready to hire you, they could have a massive profile on how easily you'd get sick, what kind of worker you are. I mean, the DNA is going to describe worker traits, right? It's not just about health. Well, let me come back to that. So you will be able to predict from DNA, what your diseases you're predisposed to. Colds and flus, how easy do you get colds and flus? They will build profiles. Very soon, they're going to have profiles based on your DNA profile that determines, well, where you live and what you do, how easy it is to get disease. I mean, undoubtedly, there's going to be some genetic information that would talk about susceptibility, colds and flus, allergies, things like that. So a company could build a profile on how desirable you would be by genetics. I mean, think about a company that's hiring somebody that's going to make $100,000 a year. I mean, key people, they don't want them sick. They don't want them out. They don't want you after 15, 20 years to come down with premature kidney failure or liver or whatever, because they're going to pay for that. They're going to want to cherry pick people that are built like pit bulls. And that leads into job titles. There is no doubt that there'll be enough genetic information accumulated that they will see if you're better suited to be a manager or a factory worker or a farm worker or a computer person. I mean, because there's going to be mental traits in here too. Traits like, how easy do you get anxious or depressed? How much energy, motivation, endurance, strength you have? They're going to piece together the DNA and these traits well enough to build these profiles to determine what workers they want and don't want. I mean, what's wrong with that movie? A lot. Now, they've already passed legislation stating that employers can't discriminate, but you've got to be kidding me. Employers will get this information if they have enough money and will. They're going to get it. And, I mean, there's other issues here that we could talk about, but you get the picture. Your DNA needs to be kept private, except for what you want to reveal. So that's where I wanted to go with this whole podcast. How can we do that? Well, until the government mandates everybody get tested, which will someday come, probably in my lifetime, if you want to get your DNA tested, do not get it done through your doctor. Do not get it done with a credit card that has your name on it. Do not go to some free, we'll take the first 50 free DNA tests. You need to do it anonymously. Because, you can do it right now. You can go online and find 20 different DNA companies that they'll send you their little DNA swab kit. You give them the money, they swab it, and they'll send you your results. So you get a burner credit card or a debit card, and you send them under the name John Doe or whatever name you like, and get the information yourself. And you keep it privately to yourself. And then you can give it to your doctor if you want to or not. You can read up about, well, what does this PKA gene mean? Or this, superoxide dismutase gene mean? I mean, the names are going to be meaningless, but there'll be so much information that you can prod through. I mean, there's going to be interpreting companies. I mean, like I said, when they get up to 300,000 or 400,000 genes and how they complex and interact, it's going to be a long time before we really understand what we're looking at. But we are talking billions, if not trillions of dollars of financial costs. They're going to shift around to who? Right? I mean, if you're an employer, do you want sicky people? Whiny people that don't show up? Oh, I had to get a haircut. I couldn't come to work. I mean, I'm an employer, and I have one lady that works for me. She's a machine. I always joke. I don't think she's real. She's a Japanese robot. She works like a machine. I mean, versus some patients I have, and it's like they have a hangnail, and they come in here and they want a week off work. So this stuff has to be protected. And all you're going to hear in medicine and from the government is how wonderful this is going to be, and no one will abuse your information. Oh, it's all kept top secret. Really? I mean, for any of you that have been not dead for the last 5 years, regardless of your political affiliations, look at all that we've seen about Google, Facebook, Twitter, the government, Snowden, WikiLeaks, all the abuses of our private information. It's all for sale all the time. It's like it's going to show up in the swap meet, man. So you have to protect yourself. There is no way that the authorities at large are going to do that. And so I think that's the only way. I mean, I'm going to get some DNA testing here, but my name is going to be whatever, Mr. Spaghetti Man. But it's going to be cash or a burner card, and I will choose who gets to look at my DNA, not everyone else. And so that's about it. But I think you have time. I don't think it's really that important right now, because a lot of it, they don't know what it means, really. DNA testing, our chromosomes, and that whole field, genetics, is exploding, and it's so complex. I mean, I read some of these papers. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, not a clue. It's like, are you speaking Russian? So I'm going to be putting some time into this because how important it is. You've really got to see both sides of the picture. And I just don't think mainstream medicine, it's just going to be wonderful and we'll test you. I mean, I already see that the government's probably going to give grants. They're going to start pouring money out. We'll give you free genetic testing. We'll have picnic day and come get your genes tested. Oh, yeah, and we won't let anyone see it, except for all the companies like Google and everybody else that wants to buy it. Sorry, what I've seen in the last 5 years about privacy is that it just doesn't exist. So this is an area you can protect yourself, and you really, really should. So that's it. I'm Dr. Debunk, debunking medical myths, garbage, and crap spread by doctors, health professionals, and the government. Thanks for listening.